Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Diana Wren Rapp, Assistant Director of the Atlanta Global Studies Center. And on behalf of the Atlanta Global Studies Center and the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, I'd like to welcome you to GSU's Global Career Series. This series brings globally minded organizations to talk to students about the rewarding opportunities that await them. For today's special event, we have partnered with the Office of Undergraduate Research and Fellowships, and we are pleased to welcome its director, Dr. Jacob English, to the program. Hailing from College Park, Georgia, Dr. Jacob English serves as the director of the Office of Undergraduate Research and Fellowships and the associate director for Georgia State's African American Male Initiative. Dr. English leads the undergraduate research team to support students pursuing undergraduate research opportunities and national awards. His office provides coaching and mentorship to all Georgia State undergraduates and alumni for nationally competitive opportunities. As the associate director of AAMI, he creates and implements programming to uplift the Black male community. Also, Dr. English is an adjunct professor in the College of Education and Human Development, and in 2019 he received the Outstanding Teacher in Educational Psychology Award. Dr. English has the rare honor to call himself a triple Panther because he received 3 degrees from Georgia State University. Welcome, Dr. English. We'd also like to welcome our featured speaker, Mr. Michael Veasy from Howard University, who will tell us about the Charles B. Rangel Graduate Fellowship Program and the Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship Program. Michael Veasy serves as the Senior Advisor for Diplomatic Fellowships for the Charles B. Rangel International Affairs Program and the Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Program. He's a retired consular career track foreign service officer and was a member of the first cohort of Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellows in 1992. In 2019, he served as the U.S. government's interagency coordinator for Ethiopia assistance. As Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Asmara from 2016 to 2018, Michael played a leading role in U.S. Eritrean negotiations that helped bring an end to 20 years of conflict between Eritrea and Ethiopia. From 2013 to 2016, he served as the Deputy Principal Officer and Consular Chief at the U.S. Consulate General in Tijuana, Mexico. Other assignments include consular tours in Mexico City, London, Johannesburg twice, and the visa office in Washington, D.C. He's also served as an economic officer in Basra, labor officer in Lagos, and a recruitment officer in the State Department's Bureau of Human Resources. He is the recipient of a State Department Superior Honor Award and several meritorious honor awards. Prior to his foreign service career, Michael worked at the Carter Presidential Center in Atlanta, Georgia. He has a bachelor's degree in international studies from Morehouse College, as well as a master's degree in social change and development from the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. He is bilingual in English and Spanish. And before I turn it over to Mr. Veasy, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded. We ask that you keep your mics muted to reduce any noise during the presentation. There will be time for Q&A after the presentation. Feel free to type in your questions in the chat at any time, and also use the reaction buttons to tell us how you feel about the presentation. Can I get a thumbs up from you all? I'm assuming I'm seeing thumbs up. I hope so. We'll call on you to unmute and ask your questions at the right time during the presentation. And now I'll turn it over to our esteemed speaker, Mr. Veasy.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Dr. English, for having me, and thank you, students, for participating in this information session. Diana's really covered my background, and one of the fortunate things that I've had a chance to do in my foreign service career is to have a diverse set of assignments where I've experienced everything, every career track that we have to offer. So I could talk a little bit about the different career tracks, and matter of fact, I will. And I've served in almost every geographic bureau in the State Department. I got my start much like where all of you are. I was a student when I was working at the Carter Center and didn't know much about the Foreign Service or what diplomats do. And my entry point into the Foreign Service was the Pickering Fellowship. And now we have, our sister program, the Rangel Fellowship, which I advise on both of them. I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to meet Alan Dubose. He was an earlier speaker in this series. He's the diplomat in residence here in the Atlanta area. He covers the region, and I'm sure that he talked about the range of State Department careers. But this conversation is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be very specific to the Pickering and Rangel entry point into the Foreign Service. I will say, however, that I will lay out sort of the 5 career tracks in the Foreign Service. As Diana mentioned, I was a career consular officer. I recently retired. And in that role, I handled everything from immigration issues. I was the senior immigration official on the California-Mexico border. So if I was there today, I would be dealing with a lot of the issues that you're hearing about in the news over the last couple of years with regard to migrants at the border. In fact, when I was there in 2013, that was a key part of my job. Consular officers also handle crisis management. I played a role in almost every major international crisis since the Thailand tsunami. I answered phones during the Thailand tsunami, helping loved ones find their American citizen relatives. I worked, I've sent my staff over to Egypt across a harrowing trip to Egypt during Arab Spring. I managed the evacuation of 10,000 American citizens out of Baja California during Hurricane Odile. And then we had another Category 5 hurricane right after that. So these are some of the things that consular officers do. I've also served as an economic officer. In fact, that's my background. That's my educational background. Once as a labor officer working with oil companies in Nigeria, dealing specifically with worker rights, health and safety issues, making sure that our American companies were treating Nigerian workers as they would treat workers here in the US. I was also the point person on the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR, in Nigeria, and working on projects like education, AIDS education in the workplace, eliminating the stigma within the workplace. I also served as an economic officer in Iraq. Political officers tend to do much of our negotiations, from human rights to peace negotiations, things like that. They deal with security matters and things like that. In my career, I served in Australia, dealing with Aboriginal human rights issues, and then most recently working with East Africa in terms of peace negotiations and helping the region trek a path forward in terms of not only their relationships, but economic development, gender issues, gender equality issues, food security, and the range. We have management officers. Management officers are officers who basically run embassies abroad. Everything from financial management to human resources to general services. They're the ones who deal with our schools overseas, our housing, just the range of different responsibilities. They're usually one of the largest sections in an embassy because there's so many responsibilities to make things run. And public diplomacy officers. These are our folks who talk to the press. They act as our spokespeople overseas. They also promote cultural value, U.S. cultural values. We've invited, in my time in the Foreign Service, I've primarily, in that capacity, I've primarily spent on the press side, but I've also been involved in inviting music groups overseas. I can remember in Eritrea, a very closed society that gets little interaction from outside. We brought a bluegrass group over to Eritrea to perform, and in a couple of days, they found themselves connecting with musicians in Eritrea in a way where before their concert, that was a sold out event, they were able to combine, Eritrean music with bluegrass and perform on stage. It was really neat to see. But these are types of things that diplomats do. The Foreign Service is very much a lifestyle. So if there are any questions about, how do you deal with sort of those sort of issues like family? And if I'm married, what happens with, my spouse? Is he or she able to work and things like that? We could talk about that. But when you sign up for the Foreign Service, it's not only a career, it's an amazing career, but it's a lifestyle as well. So going back to my entry point into the Foreign Service, and what I'm really here to talk to all of you about is the Pickering and Rango programs. So can we start the slide presentation, please? Okay, should I? Okay, great. Okay, so we have two programs in the Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Graduate Fellowship and the Charles B. Rangel Fellowship. And the Charles B. Rangel program is broken up into a graduate fellowship and a summer enrichment program. Next slide. So we'll start with Rangel first. Next slide, please.
Sorry, hold on one second. It's not moving for me. Hold on.
Would you like me to? Oh, great. Okay, so if any of you are, I think we need to go up one, right? Okay. So the Rango program involves two components. The one down, I'm sorry, we'll get it right. The Rango program involves two components, the graduate fellowship and the summer enrichment program. Next slide. Okay. We'll start with the Rango Summer Enrichment Program. So if this program is specifically for undergraduates who have at least 30 hours of coursework. So we're really talking about sophomores, juniors are excellent candidates for for this particular opportunity. And the Summer Enrichment Program is designed to provide undergraduate students with a deeper appreciation of current issues in foreign affairs. These students will have access to not only what goes on Capitol Hill, but what goes on in the State Department as it relates to international affairs. It's also to enhance knowledge and skills as you pursue careers in this field. And it's really open to all disciplines, as all of our fellowships are. So it's really refreshing to see a group of students out there that represent a wide variety of disciplines. The Summer Enrichment Program is a 6-week program at Howard University in Washington, D.C. It goes from mid-June to late July. And I'm hoping that by the time we get to this summer, it's virtual. By the time we get to next summer, we'll be back on track and it will be in person. And during those 6 weeks, you'll have academic courses, professional skills training. You will be meeting with various players in international affairs circles and building your network. And during this summer, Scholars will receive tuition, travel, room and board, and a stipend of $3,200. So if you are an undergraduate and you're not, certainly, we're talking about sophomores and juniors, and you're interested in sort of an entry point before you apply for the graduate fellowship, this is an excellent way to do it. In fact, many of our summer enrichment program scholars go on to be Rango fellows or Pickering fellows. Next slide, please. So, the Rango summer program eligibility is you have to be a U.S. citizen, at least a 3.2 GPA, and you'll see these recurring themes throughout all of our programs. And then the last one is unique to the summer enrichment program, full-time undergraduate student with at least sophomore status. Next slide. I will tell you, you'll start to see some dates pop up on these slides. These are the dates for that we had for last year's cycle. I included those dates to give you an idea of what the next cycle will look like. Those the dates for this year's cycle, have not been announced yet, but at least you'll have some idea. Moving on to the Rango International Affairs Graduate Fellowship. Now, this fellowship directly links you to a career in the Foreign Service. It prepares individuals for careers in the Foreign Service of the U.S. Department of State. And the program includes an award of $84,000 over a 2-year period for tuition, fees, living expenses, summer internships for grad school, for your 2 years of graduate school. It's $42,000 a year. The program also includes an orientation, which we're gearing up for the 2021 fellows who have just been awarded fellowships. We're gearing up for their orientation in about a month. Now, each program, each graduate fellowship, and we're starting with Rango, but I'll talk about Pickering later, has 2 internships. With the Charles B. Rango International Affairs Graduate Fellowship, the first internship is starts the summer before you start graduate school. It's a 10-week internship on Capitol Hill, working in an area of foreign affairs. So you could be working with a member or a committee, right? The second internship will be the summer between your 2 years of graduate school, where you will be working overseas at an embassy or consulate to get a better understanding of what foreign service officers do. Throughout the process, you will have you'll have mentoring from a foreign service officer, but we just started this. You're not only going to have one mentor, but you're going to have 2. One that is a more senior foreign service officer who can give you sort of the landscape. We'll stay here. That will give you sort of the landscape of the foreign service, and then you'll have a peer mentor who was themselves a fellow. Usually peer mentors have only had a couple of years in the Foreign Service, so they can relate to what you might be going through as in graduate school and in transition to the State Department. Okay. The fellowship offers, once you complete the program, get your grad degree, you have a 5-year service obligation in the Foreign Service, and many of our fellows, most of our fellows, like myself, end up spending a career. So we can move on to the next slide. So here are these dates that I was talking about. This was the 2020 cycle that brought us the 2021 fellows. So now in 2021, you can get an idea of what the application deadline will be and when we announce. I will warn you that we were pushed back about a month than our normal time frame this year because of COVID. We're probably, and I don't know, but you should expect that these deadlines will be a month earlier this year. So we may be looking at a mid-September application deadline. One of the reasons why I'm talking to all of you now, because there's a lot to prepare, between now and then you have the summer gap. And then right when you get back to school, if you're applying for these fellowships, you're going to have to be on it right away. So this to give you an idea of the schedule, the eligibility is very similar to the summer enrichment program, U.S. citizenship, 3.2 GPA. And the third for the graduate fellowship is you should be planning to enroll in a graduate program of relevance to the foreign service in the fall of 2022.
And Michael, Michael, we have a question from the chat.
Sure.
So it's a two-part question. So I'll ask the first one. So EB asks, as the graduate fellowship is for older students, is there any consideration for dependent children and or spouses during the 5-year service obligation?
Oh, absolutely. So during the time that the individual is a fellow going to grad school, you're pretty much locked into that $84,000 grant or award to attend grad school. You must complete all those components of the fellowship. Once you enter the foreign service during that 5-year commitment, your family is well taken care of. You are a foreign service officer. Your family moves with you. State Department pays all expenses. My kids have gone to school for free their entire, to some of the best schools the world has to offer for free as a foreign service officer. That begins day one of service. There are employment opportunities for spouses, but families are well taken care of in the foreign service. And there's consideration in terms of where you serve. If for any reason a family member is not able to serve, let's say child has asthma, can't serve in altitude, they're not going to send you to Mexico City. The State Department does everything they possibly can to make sure that families stay together, unless an officer chooses to serve in a danger post, and that's a choice. And even when that happens, the family is taken care of, is given what's called a separate maintenance allowance to maintain all their expenses while they're in the States. So once you enter the foreign service, families are well taken care of.
And to follow up on that, because within Evie's question, she referenced that the graduate fellowship was for older students. Do you want to clarify that statement or that thought?
The eligibility is what, are those three components: U.S. citizenship, 3.2 GPA coming out of undergrad, and the plan to start a graduate program in a relevant field in foreign affairs in 2022. Your age doesn't matter. How long you've been out of undergrad does not matter. There are many fellows who decide that the age requirement is only is the foreign service age requirement. To serve. The program itself does not have an age requirement that exists, that's any different than what the foreign service would require someone to be. And just to give you an idea, many U.S. diplomats not coming through this fellowship usually enter mid-career. They've had, they've spent 20, 30 years doing something else and decide to become diplomats. That's not unusual in the State Department. It is somewhat unusual in the fellowship program, but it's not a disqualifier.
Okay, thank you. And there's certainly other questions that we will get to, but I do want to move on through the presentation. And I think some of these questions will be answered in the next few slides. So I'll hold off on asking any more questions and let you continue.
All right, we'll go to the Thomas R. Pickering Foreign Affairs Fellowship Program. My fellowship. All right. So the Pickering Fellowship is very similar to Rangel in that it's a $42,000 per year award for your graduate program. During the Pickering also has an orientation. However, their internships work a little differently. Pickering internships are, the first internship happens the year between grad school. And with that internship, you're working in Washington, D.C. At the U.S. Department of State. So you're going to win the award. Let's say if you apply this cycle, you'll win the award somewhere around December 2021. You will not have a commitment to intern the summer of 2022. You will have to, it will be the summer of 2023 that will be your first internship. You will go back and complete your grad work, and then you'll have your second internship after you complete your degree, your 2-year degree. That internship will be overseas. And then probably a couple of months later, you will start your career in the Foreign Service. So Pickering and Rangels start their careers in the Foreign Service the same time, but their internships are a bit different. I hope that makes sense. Again, with just like Rangel, Pickering comes with a 5-year service obligation after successfully completing all aspects of the program. And we can move to the next slide.
And this may be, oh, sorry, just on that last point, because this may be a good point to ask this question. So there was also a question in the chat about, are these 5 years consecutive, or are there options for flexibility?
Okay, once you get into the when you finish grad school and you're called into the orientation class for the Foreign Service, you no longer belong to the Pickering and Rango program. You are now a U.S. diplomat. You belong to the U.S. Department of State. That 5-year commitment, that clock starts at that point. And any type of negotiation you need to do in terms of deferring time or leave without pay, you're hired, you're in a job. Any time that you want to take off of that job, you're going to have to deal with the Department of State in terms of their HR, their HR division. I will tell you, it's very difficult. My experience has been, it's very difficult to take leave without pay in your first couple of assignments unless you have an extenuating circumstance, an emergency. Of course, if there's an emergency and you just can't serve at that given time, I'm certain that the Department of State will deal with those cases on a case-by-case basis. But you're employed. You're a Foreign Service officer. So everything that comes with having that job, you would have to deal with at that point. But the clock starts at orientation. Right. Okay. In terms of the timeline, again, just exchange those 2020 dates for 2021, and you have an idea of the application process. But again, these dates will likely move up by a month. So you're looking at a mid-September again close date for applications for the Pickering Fellowship. Understand that many people who apply for these fellowships apply for both. Selections for this year, it's likely that selections for Pickering will happen before Rangel. Last year was Rangel before Pickering. And what will happen is if there are always some people who are not selected for the first fellowship who have applied for the second and have been invited to interviews and are successful with the second. So if you decide to apply for both fellowships, by all means do it. So next slide, please. All right, tips for a competitive fellowship application. I will start by saying, before I even look at these bullets, I will start by saying, proofread, proofread, proofread. Writing is so important in the Foreign Service. And I'm not only talking about what you contribute, your essays, but I am talking about the letters of recommendation and anything else that other people contribute on your behalf. Make sure you are reading thoroughly through everything in your application. The people who are successful with, getting through this process and go on to be fellows and foreign service officers will tell you that writing is so critical in what we do. Other tips, review your application, make, in terms of the statement of interest, the Pickering and Rango Fellowship was developed to promote greater diversity in the Foreign Service. And we're not only talking about diversity, ethnic, racial diversity, we're talking about gender diversity, we're talking about diversity of perspective, people coming from different, geographic diversity, people coming from different areas. Certainly a component of Pickering and Rango is bringing in students who may not have been exposed to these types of careers, who have had some type of, who are dealing with financial stressors in terms of, getting through not only undergrad, but grad school. So all of those things weigh heavily in this process. So when you're looking at your statement of interest, certainly have a statement that shows us your motivations for a career with, in international affairs, a career in the Foreign Service, but also, we want to see, we want to learn about you and how you might add that diversity and perspective to, our diplomatic corps. Take that seriously. And then what I would say about the 350-word essay, this is basically, we're looking at writing skills. So, of course, you want to have a point of view, whatever the question is asking, you want to have a point of view, but don't get caught up in your point of view to the extent that you are not writing a clear and concise essay, introduction, body, conclusion, defending your point, things like that. Make sure that, that you're able to organize your thoughts. That's what we're really looking at in that essay. Certainly we'll get this through your transcript, but your academic ability and your rigor in studies. But I will say what's even more important is, sort of the extracurricular things that you're doing. Not only that show your interest in international affairs, but interest in public service or interest in service in general. We want to learn about that side of you as well. As I mentioned earlier, need for financial assistance is a component to this fellowship, along with diversity. Need for financial assistance is another avenue that, if there is one, don't hesitate to explain, and there will be opportunities in the application process to do that. And certainly if you've received Pell Grants and things like that, it's really key to know that. I've already talked about extracurricular activities, community service, and things like that. And then just list all, professional honors and awards. I don't think that there are certain things that are not, worthy of us knowing. I mean, if it was important to you, certainly it would be important to this process, right? And proofread. Last slide. This is how you can get information about Pickering and Rango programs. The websites offer a ton of information. Our email addresses are also there. I will share my email address as well. It's michael.vc@howard.edu. Don't hesitate to contact me. Don't hesitate to contact the programs with questions. Please understand that where we are in this application process, where we're looking at early fall deadlines. So think about what you need to be doing now before school ends this semester, and what you might need to do in terms of getting everything together as you begin the next semester. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Yes, so thank you so much for that. That was extremely thorough. I definitely appreciate you sharing your background earlier on in the presentation. So I definitely appreciate that. I have a few other questions in the chat, but there are already some folks who have started to raise their hand. So they certainly can unmute themselves and ask questions, but I definitely want to make sure that I get to the questions in the chat. So and I guess you can ask your question about Howard in a second. But I'm gonna skip over that one for now, but I see that you've turned on your camera, so you can unmute yourself in a second. But there's also another question here that says, I know that the window for the 2021 fellowships has closed, but let's say that someone begins graduate school this fall. Are they still eligible to apply for the 2022 cycle?
Right. That's such a common question. It's complicated. I will say that what would have to happen for a person to apply for the 2022 fellowship is that they would almost have to be willing to, they would have to be willing to either start graduate school and know a year in that they're going to have to start a whole new 2-year program. We would not pay for the year they've already completed, and we will not pay for the second year of a 2-year program. So you would have to actually start all over. Or I've had a few fellows who have decided to defer entry into grad school, and mainly because they had other fellowships like Fulbright, things like that they could have done, and apply for Pickering and Rango. It's a risk because because it sets you back a year if you decide to defer your graduate school program, hoping to get the fellowship. But thankfully, the two people that I'm thinking about were they became fellows and they were able to start the next year. So you would have to make that tough decision to be prepared to either go 1 year of grad school and then stop and start a new program, or to just defer defer entering grad school altogether.
It's a huge risk.
Right, it is a huge risk. But you know what? I will say this, that the history of Pickering and Rango has been great in terms of entry into grad school. There's a number of schools that are part of the Association of Professional Schools and International Affairs. A lot of Ivy League schools, a lot of the Georgetowns and Johns Hopkins, and the schools you think of in terms of international affairs. They love our fellows, and I mean they fight over them. So winning the fellowship, puts you into a situation where you're applying for grad schools, and you're automatically extremely competitive for getting selected to some of the top programs in the country.
Thank you. And Ima, if you want to go ahead and mute yourself if you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Veasy. Thank you, Jacob. My questions, I have a series of them, but the way I'd like to put it is, what makes for a strong application? And what would be like this? Okay, so it's two parts. What makes a strong one, and what would disqualify someone from being considered?
Okay, what makes a strong application is your personal story. I'll be quite honest. Well, I was on the Pickering selection committee a couple of years ago, and and certainly there's a GPA that people have to meet, and really someone who's a 3.4 and someone who's a 4.0 didn't make that much difference to me. What was compelling was sort of their interest in the Foreign Service. And as a former Foreign Service officer, and I know that a lot of you may be hearing in the news. It's all over the place about diversity in the State Department. The panel that sits on this particular selection committee care about diversity. They care about different perspectives, different geographic points of view. And even, as things have become so politicized in Washington, people who have the ability, who may come from a region where whether you call them blue states or red states, but, are at least able to show the capacity to support, because this is our job, this is the oath we take, support whatever administration is in office. But I think when you're writing your essays, we just want to know how you could contribute to that conversation, how you could bring that perspective that the State Department so desperately needs to the table when we're dealing with conflicts with other countries, where we're trying to present a face of America that many people overseas don't see. So if you could tell that story and how you could contribute to it, you're going to have a strong application. I will say disqualifier, as I've said, writing. Get other people to get people to read your essays before you hand them in. That's the disqualifier. Is if your thoughts are not organized, if you're certainly proofread, grammatical mistakes, things like that will, we tend to just pass.
Thank you. Then, are there any preferred fields for the foreign service?
I am glad you asked that question, and I hope that Alan Dubose, the DIR, made this really clear in his presentation. But if he didn't, I will make it clear now. And I'm also talking to Diana and Dr. English as well. We want students from all disciplines. Part of the challenge of finding that diversity that we're looking for is that our recruitment efforts tend to be sort of targeted at political science majors and international affairs majors. If you are interested in global issues, whether it be environment, science, whether it be communications and journalism, business administration, it is just the range of different disciplines. We need you.
How strong of a role? Sorry, I'm taking everybody's time. I have a lot of questions.
That's a really good question.
Just my last question. How much of a role does GPA play in the application process?
Like I said, I could speak for myself as being on the selection committee. I'm no longer on the selection committee because I'm in a different capacity now. But and I think I could speak to for my colleagues who sit on the boards. It's not a big requirement. We have 3.2 is the requirement. Anything over that, we're looking at the person. We want to see a well-rounded person who's able to demonstrate an interest in foreign affairs, an interest in the State Department, and adds what I've said, adds that diversity of perspective to all the important work that we have to do around the world.
Yes, Ima, thank you for those questions. Did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, promise. Is there this is my second degree, and with my first degree, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not sure if there are other people with a similar experience. With my first degree, I basically went to school to play. And so that's affecting my cumulative GPA because my present GPA with my present degree is a 4.0. But because of my first GPA, my cumulative GPA is not up to a 3. Let me just put it there. Would that affect my application?
The short answer is I don't know. I will have to get back to you on that specific question to see if it's just your undergraduate GPA or whether or not it would include your your first graduate degree. So let me get back to
Yeah, Michael, we've had this question come up before. And so what I found is that y'all are looking for the cumulative GPA. So they take into consideration your undergraduate career in its totality. So they will consider your total GPA. So your GPA from your first degree combined with the second degree. Now, of course, Michael,
Okay.
please check. You are the expert. I just know in working with students in past cycles, that has been the case.
Okay, that's good to know. I will verify that, but yeah, that's good to know.
Thank you so much.
Yes. And before EB, before you unmute yourself and ask your question, I wanted to just expand on a question that Ima asked about what makes a strong application. So in my office, as Diana, she introduced, I'm in the Office of Undergraduate Research and Fellowships. So in my role, me and my team support students in their pursuit of any undergraduate research opportunity or any national award opportunity. So what does all of that mean? So that means we walk you through the entire application process. So guidance, writing support, interview support. As Michael mentioned, it's very important to be strategic about selecting your recommenders. We walk you through that process, as well as connecting you with any resource on campus that is needed for you to complete a successful application. And so later on in the session or at the end of the session, I'll make sure I'll put the bookings link, which is a scheduling link to make an appointment with someone in my office to talk about these national award and undergraduate research opportunities. I'll put that link in the chat so that if you want to have additional or talk about this further, we can do so. I think that's it for now as far as the support services in my office. EB, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. So it's Debbie, like Debbie, it rhymes with Debbie.
Oh, Abby, yes. My apologies.
It's okay. You couldn't have known. It's not a very common name. So I also have multiple questions. I have two. But the first question is, Michael, you mentioned a lot about writing being important to the role. And I was wondering, what sort of writing do you do once you're in the field?
Another great question. Well, for the purposes of the application, what we're really looking at is just the basics, organizing thought, and a well-structured essay, and certainly something that is compelling. But once you become a fellow, I run the writing program for the fellowships. Writing for the Foreign Service is its own animal. It's quite different than writing for a university, writing in academia. There are a lot of rules. Policy writing tends to have to incorporate an understanding of what's going on around you, not only in terms of what you're trying to accomplish in your particular office, or but you're having to think about different agencies and what is the NSC doing, what is the White House doing, what is the Department of Defense. So policy writing becomes very different, and the structure is very different than what you're used to in the academic world. Don't worry, it is my job to get you prepared for writing for the Foreign Service. So once you become a fellow, there's going to be quite a bit of that, either both in your internships and with our writing program.
Okay, awesome. And then the second question I had was, I'm so sorry I missed the beginning of the presentation, but I guess my question is, I understand you mentioned that as a foreign service officer, you're sort of bound to the current administration. So I'm getting a sense that there's a lot of, I don't want to say rules, but the direction of content, we'll say, goes sort of from the top down to you. But is there any room for like initiative or, it's sort of, I forget the term, it's sort of like being an entrepreneur within a corporate entrepreneurship. Is there any room for that to sort of, suggest that to your superior or whatever?
Oh, absolutely. And in the fellowship, we'll talk a lot about this, but I'll just give you some insight. I mean, there have been times in my career where I didn't quite agree with where the administration was going on various issues. And as I became more senior, I was sort of, front and center on some of those issues. And one of the great things about the Foreign Service, particularly when you're overseas, is that you're out there, you're the eyes and ears for the entire US government. So, that writing skill that I talk about that's so important, we write in a way to influence, even just slightly. So I may have the White House in my ear about this is what we want to do in this particular country. If I could report back to them what's going on in this country, in a way that makes suggestions, because in almost everything that I wrote, particularly with regard to the Ethiopia-Eritrea conflict, understand we were not on board with, supporting Eritrea in any way in terms of coming to the table. We were very much pro-Ethiopia, and we had to slowly move the rest of the federal government to a point where everyone said, okay, we'll give this a try. We'll try to, support some initiatives that bring Eritrea to the table. All that was done by us working very hard to influence through our reporting. So you just have to, we could get into the nuts and bolts of how you do that, but absolutely, you could sway a thought process, you could sway an administration to think differently.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much.
And if it's okay, I'm going to go to Erica next. She has her hand up. Erica, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
I also had a couple of questions. I am a French and international business major, and I've recently decided to minor in political science as well. I have a particular interest in like the Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe. Now these are still, Martinique in particular is considered like a foreign department of France. So would that be something, are you able to express that you have preference for certain areas based on language? And then is that even a place that we're really focusing on, or are we more focused on France itself?
I will tell you the places that people don't think that we're focused on are the best places to serve for Foreign Service officers, because you become the policy. A lot of my time in Eritrea is just not a lot of people were focused on it. So we were able to do, huge things. I was also in Madagascar part of my Johannesburg tour, where nobody was thinking about some of the political issues that were going on in Madagascar, and a lot of what we were contributing there became the policy. So we're everywhere, just to But to your question with regard to can you focus on certain areas, the answer is yes. Your first two assignments are more directed, but you still have an influence in terms of where you want to go. So the way this works is when it's time to bid on when it's time to be assigned to a new position, you have a bid list. Anything that's not on your bid list, you're not going. This is not the military where the government forces you to go somewhere you don't want to go. You have to actually actively bid on it. But to that extent, your first two-year assignments are more directed, so you get less say in terms of where you want to go. But once you get beyond those 2 years, or those first 2 assignments, you are extremely involved in where you want to go. There are a lot of Foreign Service officers that concentrate regionally, whether it be the Caribbean or whether it be South Asia, the Middle East or whatever. We have a lot of people in the Foreign Service who spend their entire career in one region. That's a way to go about it. I bounced around everywhere. It's just, that was just me. But you have a ton of say, and not only in terms of your interest, but in terms of what your family needs and personal issues and things like that come into play in terms of what you put on your bid list. But you're not going anywhere that you don't decide to put on your list.
And then is there the opportunity, I know that this is 5 years, so I have a pretty young son and it would just be me and him, going wherever. Is there the opportunity to extend how long you stay somewhere? Like, if I do the 5 years, can I end up staying on and staying in the country that I'm in or the region that I'm in?
Your first 2 assignments are 2 years apiece. And really that 5-year commitment is 2 assignments. Most people end up spending about roughly a year, maybe a little bit less in Washington, either through orientation, language training, training for their particular job and things like that. So during those 5 years, you're going to have 2 assignments and you cannot extend in those first 2 tours. After that, you can extend.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Veasy, could you tell us more about the languages that are desired in the Foreign Service and if foreign language fluency is valuable in an application?
All right. Certainly, if you're fluent or proficient in a foreign language, that plays a role in terms of your starting salary. There are other things, graduate degrees, which all the fellows will have, plays a role in terms of your starting salary. You don't have to be even proficient in any other language to be in the Foreign Service. However, I will tell you that if you speak a hard language, let's say Arabic or Mandarin or something like that, trust me, they're going to use it in your first assignment. They're going to make sure that they're assigning you because it's so difficult to teach those languages and get our officers out the post that if you come with a hard language, you could pretty much assure yourself that you're going to be using that language in one of your first 2 tours. That said, we have what's called the Foreign Service Institute. Officially it's the National Foreign Affairs Training Center. And it's a campus, it's a college, and it teaches everything from management classes to, political and public diplomacy classes to conflict, resolution to languages. I mean, most of that campus is made up of language instructors, language classes. So before you go out to an assignment, we're going to teach you the language if you don't already have it.
Thank you. That was very helpful. We have about 2 minutes left in our program, and I see that, is it Lal? Do you want to unmute yourself and quickly ask your question, and then we're going to wrap up the program for the day.
Okay, thank you. My question is, I'm originally from Ethiopia. As Michael explained, we are representing the United States value and the culture, the country that in the country that we are strange for their culture and their values. So how can we trust or get the right information from a government or different agencies to influence and then report back the right information to the bureau?
I'm trying to, you're breaking up a little bit. I'm trying to understand the question. I don't know.
How we, my point is, I don't know if I have a weak internet connection. My point is how we trust the information we gather from government or different agencies in order to present the right information.
Right. So in my career, I've worked in, I'll tell you, my undergraduate or my graduate school work was U.S.-Cuban relations. So I've had a bit of background, not only there, but, when I was in South Africa, they were just coming out of apartheid. And, so I've had a bit of a background in working with governments where the trust level between, the people, not only the government, but the people and the U.S. government wasn't necessarily there. And leading all the way up to my last assignments, dealing with the Ethiopian government, and on the other side of the border, the Eritrean government, understand that those were some tense negotiations. And, and me working on both sides of the border, they were asking some of those same questions. How can we trust what you're saying? It takes, I'll answer it like this. This is the reason why I'm doing the job that I am in terms of the Pickering and Rangel, bringing in more diversity in the Foreign Service. At that time, I think my background, and understand when I was there was a lot going on in terms of race relations here in the States. And we were all seeing that from Eritrea. And I sat down with the Eritreans, I said, and they quite, point blank said, how do we trust what you're telling us, And, because of our legacy and history of dealing with the United States on various issues, I said, look, I've had, culturally, my family in the States are dealing with some of those same issues with the U.S. government in terms of, in terms of trust, in terms of good faith and things like that. And I was able to build sort of a situation where we're sitting on the same side of the table saying, yeah, there's a lot of work to do in the area of trust, but having a representative like me who understands some of the struggles that, that not only East African countries have had with the United States, but that I've had myself in dealing with my own government, gave me sort of a window into being able to have the hard discussions. I still, it didn't change my job in terms of promoting human rights, because Eritrea does, have this issue with, human rights and rule of law and things like that. And it didn't change my responsibility in terms of supporting U.S. foreign policy, but having a person that has a very different perspective of life than what they were used to seeing was very important to overcoming, that issue, that challenge of just having dialogue. And that's why this is so important to have all of you here and thinking about joining the Foreign Service, because we need that level of diversity in the State Department to be able to tell their own stories and say, hey, we're not on separate side of the table. But, we could see common ground in certain issues. And I think that's the step we have to make. So I'm not discounting their trust question, but I am saying that when you have those different perspectives at the table, the issue that you're talking about in terms of trust tends to be, tends to work itself out just a little bit better.
Thank you, Michael Veasy, and thank you, Dr. English, for being here with us today. I really hope that some of you in the audience will consider applying for these fellowships. It sounds like such a challenging and rewarding opportunity. So if you have questions after the program, please feel free to reach out to me or Dr. English or Michael Veasy, and we'll be happy to answer your questions. On behalf of the Atlanta Global Studies Center and the Center for Urban Language Teaching and Research, thank you for joining our Global Career Series. We will be back in the fall for more sessions, so we hope to see you then. Thank you all and have a wonderful afternoon.